Hi, good evening, parents and students. I'm Mr. Chu, or you can call me Teacher Mingy. Right, I'm the head of science in my stretcher, and today I'll be sharing with all of you here about what to expect for P3 and P4. I believe school has already started, of course. Okay, and your child has already been in school for a while. Okay, of course, I mean this is the first time your child, for those that are in P3, right, your child in P3, this is the first time your child is learning science. Okay, so the thing about learning science is that uh, it's not that it's not a very easy subject because you need to be able to understand how things work. And science is all about explaining all these phenomena that we see around us. Okay, so in P1 and P2, there are no the students don't learn science. Okay, but only start in P3. Right, for those in P4, okay, your child is in P4. Right, so your child has went through P3 and remember that P3 and P4 are the foundational concepts. And all these concepts that your child is going to be learning in P3 and P4 will be needed for P5 and P6. And of course, eventually for the PSLE. Okay, so it's very important to get all this information, all these concepts, learn it well, all right, and then be able to apply them in the upper primary, P5 and P6. Okay, now let me share my screen here. Hold on, huh? Right, so we'll be sharing both for P3 and for P4. All right. So now, one thing you must know is that for P3 and P4, actually for science, like generally, even for P5 and P6, and even in the secondary level, okay, science is split into different types. Okay, I can call them different pillars of science, like physics, biology, chemistry. Okay, but at primary level, when the student first starts learning, they are only exposed to biology and physics. And the terms used here is called life science, physical science. Physical science, of course, means physics. Life science for biology. Why is that so? Why is there no why is there no chemistry? Right, because chemistry is a subject that's a bit more abstract. Hmm. Okay, when your child start learning science, uh, you know, they learn the most fundamental things like living things, non-living things, animals, insects, plants, fungi, etc. These are the most basic things that your child will learn at the very start when they learn science in P3. And then when they go to P4, okay, then we'll talk about more physical science. Okay, because your child has to get used to how science works. And the easiest way to let your child understand how science works and how you can apply all this information is really through concepts that they can relate to. And the easiest one is talking about animals, right? They have seen those pictures of animals since very young. I introduce them to animals like elephant, dog, cat, the very first thing that the first few things that they know. So we start learning about these characteristics. Okay, and eventually when they go further up, okay, they'll learn more physical science in P4, like matter, light, heat, where it gets a bit more abstract, but they have become more mature because they have already learned science in P3. Okay, and they have a hang of it. Okay, so these are the topics that are learned at P3 level. Living things, non-living things, diversity of living things. That includes, okay, this diversity of living things includes a couple of subtopics, such as animals, plants, fungi, and bacteria. Okay, this one can be together or separate, depends. So you learn about these four main groups of living things. All right. And it can be quite long. This could be all the way until maybe the mid-year, depending on how much the schools teach. Okay, but some schools usually teach slightly more. They okay. The thing is, in the latest textbook, right? this is the order of the top. These are the order of the topics. But no schools don't exactly follow this whole list in order. Okay, they don't follow the text. Not all schools follow the textbook order of topics. So it really depends. Okay, some schools will choose to teach life cycle altogether after the living things because it makes sense, right? Because the students learn about living things and they learn about the life cycles of these living things. So that makes sense. But different schools teach differently. Some of them follow the textbook because the textbooks are all thematic. So the in the textbook is all by diversity. Okay, then uh we have interactions. Hmm. Okay, cycle interactions. Cycle is one team. Okay, next is under interaction. So by different teams. Okay, so that depends on schools. So different students will learn in different order. But this is the order that we will teach in my stretcher. Okay, following the textbook order. Now, but in my stretcher, we also teach an extra topic, which is plant system. Now, plant system is not like totally new per se, right? Because uh, your child will have already learned about plants in the diversity of living things. So they already have some understanding of what plants are and what the parts that the plants have. So that's why we choose to teach in P3. But having said that, we still teach plant system in P4. Okay, we will still reteach that, right? Because some students may not have joined for P3. Okay, so it is still essential that the P4 students still learn this topic. Okay, just like me, we teach it in P3 as well as the last topic. But essentially, it's not like anything too difficult because those are most of the things that are taught in this topic have already been taught in the diversity of living things. You learn about the plant parts like leaf, roots, stem, and what are their functions. Okay, which generally students would roughly know when they learn the first two topics. Okay? Hmm. Now, these are the topics that are in P4. So this is for P4 level. All right. So for P4, okay, we learn about systems. Okay, this is a textbook topic, textbook order. Learn about body systems, then plant systems. So this one we teach again, as mentioned. Okay, and then we talk about matter, light, and heat. These are the physical science. So these are the ones that are topics that a lot of students face difficulty in because it's not so relatable, right? Plant system, animal system, your body system, like we talk about digestion, all these things that students can easily relate to, right? We eat our food, put into the mouth, and what do? We chew the food. So all these things, your child can easily understand. Okay, it's also that's a reason also why it's the first topic that is taught in P4. Okay, so P4, P3 and P4. Usually they start off the easier topics, then move on to the slightly more difficult one as the year goes past. Okay, so the next half of the year is all about physical science for P4 students. Okay, and it's not so easily relatable. Now let's talk about you see just now at the start I mentioned that P3 and P4 topics, all this that the students learned, they're all tested for PSLE. Okay, it's not that you learn at P3 and P4, but no, you forget eventually. And then you learn a fresh set. It's not that way. Because for PS, how science work is that, how the syllabus work is that it's all in going a spiral approach. Right? We teach a certain topic, but just the fundamental things about that topics. Then as you go higher and higher, it can still be the same topic, but more complex. Okay, like for example, digestive system. Just learn about a few parts that can digest the food. And that's about it. Okay, but let's say you go to secondary level, and then you learn digestive system again, but in more detail, like in more details, like what are the enzymes, what are the different other organs that help in the digestion as well. So these are things that will also be learned, but that topic still remains the same. Okay? Okay, now the PSLE science is that a lot of things is not just about memorizing. Okay, many parents may have this misconception to think that, oh, uh, science is all about memorizing. Right? It's not true. Okay, it's all about understanding actually. You must understand. Okay, Of course, there might be some memorizing to do, right? But if you understand how some of these concepts work, okay, it can be easily applied. Okay, so if the student don't understand this concept, then they will have difficulty trying to write out the answer because when they understand, okay, and when they see the question, okay, they can easily apply, right? And a lot of questions in science, okay, eventually, like when you go to PSLE science, a lot of them will be application. Not all. There's a certain percentage. Okay, some of them are recall questions, but there are a good percentage that are application, meaning that you must not, of course, not just memorizing, not just understanding. Okay, you must be able to learn, apply what you have learned, okay, into the questions. Okay, so this is how PSLE is split: 50% physical science, 50% life science. And like I mentioned, okay, a good percentage of it is low block topics. Hmm. All right. So this is just to show you the uh, breakdown here. Now, just for a heads up, now actually recently the PSLE exam format has changed. I mean, for now, your child don't need to worry about this. Okay, but just to share with you like what to expect in the future. And also to know things like, okay, multiple choice is actually 2 marks. Each MCQ is 2 marks. And you know, right, MCQ we have 4 options. Very easy to make a careless mistake and you choose the wrong one. Okay, so what your child needs to do is really master the concepts, especially in a topical manner. Okay, learn each topic well, master it. Okay, you can do a lot of MCQ if you want, because for MCQ, it's very important. Right, altogether, if there are 30 marks, 30 questions, and there are 2 marks per question, that is already a 60 marks in the paper. Okay, so this is the PSLE exam format. This is the latest one. This will be for this year PSLE 2026. Okay, last year one is slightly different. Okay, but I don't think I need to talk about that. Okay, they have changed it slightly. So now we have 30 MCQs. Okay, and each one is 2 marks. So it will apply to P3 and P4 as well. Open-ended questions, as of now, P3 and P4, the question will be simpler, but the amount of marks given would still be around the same 2 to 5 marks. Okay? But at P3 and P4 level, there are more questions which are simpler in the sense whereby the question type is uh not those extremely long answers. Okay, it could be like some of them could be just tick and crosses. Some of them could be just to draw lines to link different points. Okay, or just fill in the blanks. There are some questions that which are like that. Okay, and that is really to help students because they are just P3 and P4. They have just started learning science. It's really to help them gain some of these keywords and phrases and be able to craft their answers eventually. Okay, because in P5 and P6, there are no more fill in the blanks. Okay, in PSLE, it will just be all blanks. Okay, for you to write a long sentence. Okay, now, talk about the assessment objective for the PSLE. So, just now I talked about understanding. So, that is very important. We learn all the science facts. Okay, but do not just learn it, make sure it's understood. And if let's say there's something that your child does not understand, right, make sure to know when you consult the teacher. Because all these are fundamental concepts. And if there is a certain gap here, then eventually when you go higher up, okay, there will be constantly that gap. Okay, so students who are here, okay, make sure you try your best to ask your teacher. Okay, if you are too shy, you can do it after the class. Just check with your teacher after the class. You do not have to do it like during the lesson itself. You can do it after the class. Or maybe even check with your parents because some of this your parents also know, right? Because P3 and P4 concepts are not that complicated yet. But of course, if the parents you have some difficulty, okay, there's always the teacher that you can consult. All right. And application of all these things that we learned. Okay. Now for science, it's very important to be exposed to many scenarios. Right. So let's say, for example, when you go out with your family. All right, there are things that you can ask your child relating to science. Because all these different things that you see, you can explain them by science. I'm not saying everything, okay, depending on the context. Okay. A lot of things can be explained by science and simplified for your child to understand. Like I give you one simple example, and it could be quite applicable and relatable to many students here also. Let's say a child wears spectacles. Okay, then what happens is, okay, you take a bus. The bus is very cold. What happens when you walk out of the bus? And then there'll be some observation, right? So all these are kind of like what we call the process skills. We have observation, we predict, we analyze. Okay, so the observation is that, okay, what happens to your spectacles? It became fogged up. It became foggy. You cannot see because the spectacles have become fogged up. Okay? Why is that so? And then that's when the science come in. Right? You can infer. Infer means to think about, oh, maybe the spectacle is cold. So I infer that the water landed on the spectacles and formed and caused it to become fogged up. Okay, so that's inference. Or we can say predicting. Predict what will happen, right? So that is before this thing happens. So let's say, I'm gonna walk out this cold bus. So I'm predicting that my spectacles is gonna become misty. Okay? So it really depends on the situation. So you can come up with different way to explain some of these phenomenon. Alright? So and all these things are process skills. Okay, so which includes analysis, evaluating, generating possibility, hypothesis, and communicating. These are different process skills. Okay, and there's more than this. Alright. But in terms of assessment wise, like a test paper, okay, a lot of these are in the form of pictures, tables, or graphs. Okay, and your child will be required to look at the experiment setup, analyze that whole question, be it the setup, the question stem itself, the picture, the table, the graph, okay, and be able to explain why the trend is that way, or why is there this thing that is happening. Okay, so when they do that, they are already using process skills. Okay. Now, for parents who still do not know how the grading system work for at this point. So this is the AL system, right? This is the score grade. AL1 is when your child scores 90 and above. And AL2, 85 to 89, and so on. Right? So you can see, right, for AL1 is the first 10 marks. Okay? And AL2 is a difference of 5, AL3, 5, AL4, 5. Then it goes to 10 again. I'm talking about the range, range. Like for AL2, if your child score 85 to 89, just a 5 marks, okay, in AL2, and 5 marks in AL3. So it's very easy to jump grade. So you can do one assessment, right? Maybe you were scoring at AL4. Then maybe the next assessment, okay, you did better. Immediately you could jump to AL1 because it's a difference of 20. There's a good possibility, and it's very easy to improve. Okay, because you know what? I just started about MCQ, right? MCQ, each question is 2 marks. Okay, and if let's say, okay, your child is good in science, usually they score AL1. Okay, then make a careless mistake. 5 MCQ wrong, and then you have lost that AL1. Okay, because the first one is 10 marks. The AL1 is 10 marks, right? You just need to have 5 MCQ wrong, and assuming the open-ended questions are all correct, and then you will have jumped to AL2. Okay, so it's very easy to jump grade. You can improve very quickly, but you could also, drop suddenly. And you realize that actually, because maybe MCQ, you made a careless mistake, you lost 2 marks, 2 marks, 2 marks, and you drop to AL2. Okay, so be very careful that AL2 to AL4, they are very close. Each of them is just 5 marks. Okay, so at this point, any parents have any question regarding this scoring system? Let me just pause for a while and wait for any questions. Okay, just give me a short second. Anyone has any question at this point of time? So this is the current scoring system that is used for PSLE. Okay, no longer the T-score and all. Yeah. Okay, I'll move on. Right. So currently in my stretcher, in this week, okay, we are at week 11. Okay, so what to expect in this week? Okay, actually last week, this is for P3, right? Actually for last week, your child has already started learning this topic on types of living things. Okay, so type of living things, like I mentioned just now at the start, actually not just started, actually you are already halfway through, right? Because from week 4 to week 8, you've already started. Okay, then there was a revision in the middle to break off what they are learning. All right, revise on that, then continue. So this is a very big topic because there are a lot of subtopic, right? That's how I mentioned there is the animals, plants, fungi, and bacteria. Quite a big topic. Okay, and it takes a while because animals there are many types of animals. We have we have the mammals, reptile, amphibian, birds, insect. So there are a lot of characteristics to remember. Okay, so that requires a little bit of memorization. Okay, that requires a little bit of that. And then the plants, fungi, and bacteria, and what are their characteristics. Okay, so that's why this first topic, we extend to a number of weeks, okay, in order to continuously drill on these concepts to get them right. Okay. Hmm. Then subsequently, okay, we have some revision before we move on to materials. Okay, materials, you learn about the different types of materials like plastic, glass, etc. Okay, but essentially, what are the properties of materials? Like strength, flexibility, okay, whether it can float on water or not, things like that. These are the properties of materials. Okay, so then we'll move on to mid-year revision. That means that our mid-year checkpoint, which is in week 23, will cover topics like living and non-living things and their characteristics, different types of living things and their characteristics, okay, and materials. Okay, for materials, it's actually 5 weeks. So there's also quite a bit of practice on that. Okay, so three main topics for the mid-year checkpoint. Now, talking about P4, P4 now we are learning the topic of matter. Okay. Started off the year, okay, the new academic year with some revision on the P3 and P3 topics. Okay. And then like I said right at the start, we follow the textbook textbook order. So human body system, then plant system. Okay, then we did a bit of revision. Then in January, we started on matter. So this is the start of the physical science. Okay. And this part here is a bit more abstract, and the child needs to focus, pay attention in class because it's not so easy to understand. You learn about the solid, liquid, and gas. Okay, it's not so easy to understand. All right. Then a few weeks later, we'll do light. All right. So for the mid-year checkpoint, right, there will be human body system, plant system, matter, and light. And there are also some P3 concepts that will be tested. Okay. So all these detail will be released by our teachers in class. The teacher will tell you what to revise for when the time comes. All right. So just to give parents a heads up, these are the weeks where we will be having our checkpoints. So mid-year checkpoint, end of year checkpoint, just take note of the dates. Okay, week 23, which is in the middle of April, and end of year checkpoint, end of year checkpoint of course will be a bit later. Okay, sometime in September. Okay, now, so as of now, parents, do you have any questions regarding this whatever that I went through? Or maybe you all can let me know like are there any challenges that your child is facing when you all learn science? Yeah, feel free to put your response in the chat. Yeah. I would say right the most common at least the P3 and P4 level, the most common challenge would be to really uh understand what the concepts, what the topics are, what the concepts are, right? Because especially on P3, I think P3 we all just the students just started learning science, and they are not so they have not experienced learning science so far, and now they started learning this subject. Okay, so it's new to them, and they are getting the hang of it. For P4 students, okay, you have already gone through 1 year of science. All right. What are some of the what are some of the difficulties that you have faced? So I would say maybe answering the open-ended questions. That will be the most common challenge for P4 students. Right? Because okay, MCQ is straightforward. You have a few options, just choose the best one. But for open-ended questions, you are supposed to write in your own words. Okay, and P3 and P4 students struggle trying to write a proper sentence. Not to say try to explain scientifically. Okay, the difficulty of notes. So people say that science is not a language subject, right? But essentially, we need to write we need to write sentences, sometimes even long sentences to explain the concept, to explain the observations that we see. Okay, but if there's problem trying to structure the sentence, okay, or to even spell correctly, then there will be some issues. Now, for spelling, okay, then that's when some teachers will say that science is not English, right? Okay, but essentially some of the keywords you still have to try to spell them correctly. Okay, I mean, what we try to do is in our lessons, as much as possible, okay, try to spell them correctly. If you don't let the student practice on spelling them correctly, then eventually they will not spell it correctly. Okay, because we are the tuition center, right? So we try to practice on all this, and eventually when you go to the exam, right, you are able to spell them correctly. Not that if you spell them wrongly, you may be marked down. Depends on how badly you spell them wrongly, okay? If it's very badly spelled, you can be marked down because it cannot be understood. Okay? But if let's say missing one letter, okay, it can still be accepted. But next time, try to make it correct. And that's what we do, right? We keep on practicing and make sure all this can be corrected. Okay, so first thing will be understanding the concept. And know, uh, how do you solve this problem? Right? It's really about having no, it's really about first thing, clearing your doubts. Like I mentioned just now, if there's any doubt, check with your teacher. The teacher can explain again and help you understand. If still not clear enough, okay, after the lesson, look for the teacher again and see whether there's another way to explain things. Okay, because you do not want to leave the lesson not understanding something. And then, okay, maybe then you think about, oh, maybe next week I ask the teacher again. But by the time next week, you have forgotten. Like that's what my students will tell me. So what did we learn last week? Don't remember. And they will say things like that because they don't remember. But on the spot, if you have clarified some things, then that leaves an impression and you will remember. Okay? And also, it's important to have a lot of practice. Right? Just understanding all these concepts is not enough. Practice, practice, and practice. Because why? You need to see the different ways the questions can be asked. Because it's essentially for science, right? The concepts are all the same. There's a mixture of a lot of all the concepts, but they can test you in different ways. That's the only thing. Okay, the concepts that everyone learns is the same. They can test you in all the different ways. So if we practice enough, are exposed to all the different question type, and then essentially, you will not go too far off. Okay, and for science, there are a lot of different scenarios. So it could be the same concept, but they test you differently. Like I just now talked about the spectacles becoming misty, right? So they could ask you in different scenario, right? Like uh, for example, when you finish a hot shower, why did the mirror get fogged up? So essentially, it's a different scenario, but the same concept. Okay, so that is something that we can use science to explain. But this concept is for condensation, learned in P5. Okay, so I'm just giving you an example that we can use these science concepts to explain that same phenomenon, but in different scenarios. Okay, so it's important to practice a lot and get different exposure, different type of questions, different scenarios. Now, and a lot of times is students will use green pen to do correction, right? Right. So you do corrections, but always come back to revisit the mistakes. It's important to have a routine, right? So after you finish your class, you have done your corrections, you go back home. Okay, if you have a bit of time, when you look through some of these things again, no, when you look through again, then you will leave a fresh memory in your head, right? Because if not, by the time next week, you have forgotten what you have done. Okay, and then you will make that same mistake. Okay, so it's very important to revisit all your corrections. So, in my structure, okay, when we teach all these concepts, what we use is the study notes and the concept paper. Let me just bring that up. Now, just briefly show like what are the things that we have that will help the students understand all this better. Okay. Right. So this is the study notes. Okay. We usually start off a topic with lesson objective, learning objective, like what are we going through today. All right. So, like for example, this was in week 7, it already passed for P3. I talk about main characteristics of plants, what are plants used for, what are some of the main parts and their functions, and different ways to classify plants. Okay, and in our notes, we have a lot of information. They are usually in point form, bullet points. Okay, and we have bolded some of the keywords and phrases. There are also diagrams to show you uh some of these parts if we need to. Okay, or different type of plants if we need to. Okay, so this is for the notes. Now in our notes, we also have this part here. These are all the features. Did you know? Alright, so if not, it's not just about learning what we need to learn for the exam, but there are also other things that we will, go through, be it general knowledge, be it things that are out of syllabus. So all these are very important, to learn holistically, right? Not just what is needed for the exam. Right, for example, we have some trees which, okay, we know about roots. Roots are usually in the ground to take in water. But have you seen trees with hanging roots? Right, so these are also explained using science, right? You see some of these trees you have seen it outside somewhere. Don't know where, but somewhere. And these are actually roots. Right, so these are breathing roots, okay, which are part of the banyan tree. So of course the function is still very similar, right? Taking water. Okay. And like mangroves, right? Mangroves, okay, they also have roots that stick out of the ground. Okay, so they're all from the ground, they will stick upwards. that also helps them to breathe. Okay, it's called the breathing roots. Right. So just give you some examples of what is taught in class lah. Yeah. Now, in our lesson notes or study notes, at the end of it, we also have these keywords and phrases for the students to take home and go through this list, and they can practice on writing these phrases if they need to. Right? And when they start doing open-ended questions, they can use some of these keywords for their answers. Okay? So if they can refer to all these are all at the back of the study notes. Okay? So you can find all this there. Then when we finish our lesson, our study notes, okay, then we will have like a quick summary of or quick recap of what we have just learned. Okay, so it could be fill in the blanks, it could be a mind map, it could be a crossword puzzle, different ways to connect the different things that we have learned. Okay, the simple things, the very basic parts, like body of an insect has three parts. What are they called? Things like that. Okay, this is for filling the blanks. Then it could be a word search. Okay, so all these will help the student, link up the concepts and remember some of these keywords or phrases. Okay, so this is about learning the concepts. Let me bring it back to the PowerPoint. Hmm. Now, just now I talked about applying some of these concepts that we have learned. Okay, so we have learned about all the concepts, we have memorized a little bit, we have understood fully. How do we apply them? Okay, now like I mentioned, right, science is everywhere around us. We can use science to explain a lot of things that has happened. Okay, but you can also try to explore these things that are around you. Right, for example, even just growing your own plants, okay, can help you learn some things about science. Okay, for example, if you don't water your plant is going to die. Why is that so? Very simple understanding, right? Because all living things need water. And if the plant is not watered, the roots cannot absorb the water. Basically, there's no water. The roots has no water to absorb, so the plant will eventually die. Okay, very simple things like that. Or you can understand the life cycle of a plant, okay, by growing the own plant from seed to a young seedling, okay, to the adult plant that can flower. Okay, so all these things can be explained using science. And in our class, we have a lot of hands-on activity under Junior Einstein. Okay, Junior Einstein is our activities held in class whereby there's some hands-on activity. Depending on how difficult the activity is, sometimes it's teacher's demonstration. Okay, so that helps to link some of these concepts that we have learned in theory and apply it physically. Okay. On top of that, for P3, we also have Discovery Zone. Right, Discovery Zone is a interactive activity that is held usually at the end of the lesson. Okay, depending on the teacher, but most of them should be at the end of the lesson before our class end around 20 to 30 minutes. Okay, so that's when we have more even more hands-on activity. So let me just share that with you. Now, this is one example of the discovery zone. So this will be held soon, okay, week 14. Okay, now, so discovery zone can be in terms of like it can be somewhat like a game, but not all the time, depends on the activity, right? But it's not just about the game, okay? There is some science concept that the students can learn, can apply, and so on. Okay, so this is like snake and ladder, a simplified snake and ladder. Okay, and when they land on each of these box, then the teacher will say something. Okay, and you're supposed to explain it using what you have learned. You're supposed to give the answer based on what you know. Okay, so it's about learning science concept, but through a fun activity. Other than all those, very theory-based, very standard academic kind of learning. Okay, so we have all this to help the P3 student understand that. Okay, I think for the P4 students, you have went through some of this already. Okay, last year lah, if you are in my structure. All right. Yeah, so this is what our discovery zone looks like. Okay. Okay. We go back there. All right. So eventually, when students learn more and more and go to higher level, right, it's very important to be able to answer some of these open-ended questions. Okay. Now, whenever the question is asked, there are usually some command words. Okay, such as state, describe, explain, suggest. Okay, or there can be the uh why, how, okay, which. These are also terms that will appear in our question, and you must know what the question is asking for. Okay, because this will tell you how to answer the question. Is it to explain? So it's a why. Okay, if it's how means you're supposed to describe something. Which means that you're supposed to choose something. So you must know what the question is actually asking you for. Okay? And when you go through the question, be it MCQ or open-ended, you must always look for clues in the questions. You can underline, you can circle, okay? But only underline and circle those things that can help you. Okay? Do not circle the whole question or highlight the whole question. Then might as well not do it. Okay? You only want to look for things that will help you get the answer. All right, and always be very careful. Now, some students do the questions very fast. You think the MCQs are so easy, but remember, one MCQ is 2 marks, and if you are careless, you lose that 2 marks easily. Okay, so make sure you analyze all these data that are given to you, diagrams, graph carefully. All right, and if you are doing MCQ questions, maybe you can choose elimination method. This is a lot. I mean, let's say you are taking the assessment, the test, or the exam. You need to practice some exam techniques, okay? Which will teach you again. Right. Now, for open-ended questions, okay, what we teach students in our class usually, okay, we have some of these acronyms or catchy phrase. This is for learning the concepts. Okay, and that will help the student, be able to write down all these answers in the open-ended or even for the MCQ also. All right, and like I mentioned, spelling, please try to spell it as accurately as possible. All right, if let's say you have some difficulty trying to spell it correctly, we always practice a few more times. All right, and I think these points we have mentioned before. Okay, make sure you have extra practice, sufficient practice, and always look through your corrections. Right, because I think even at the lower level, right, P3 and P4, uh, a lot of times students do the questions in class, do the corrections, file the worksheet in the file, but never come back to look at it ever again. They just stop somewhere. Okay, so always come back and look at those corrections. There's a reason why corrections are done in a different color pen, like green pen, bright color, okay, or a different color pen, right? So it's really to make the corrections stand out. And when you revisit all these corrections, you know where you have gotten wrong, what is the mistake. Okay, so it's very important to go through some of these things. Now, in our materials for my structure, right, we have some of these analysis for students. Okay, so uh in our worksheets, okay, for the students worksheet, right, we can talk about it answer template first, Now, because we are dealing with a lot of experiment-based questions, okay, so there are questions like what is the aim of the experiment? What's the student trying to find out? What's the relationship between this and that? So there are actually some answer templates that the students can follow. Okay, but of course it's just for reference. After practicing a few times, it's expected for the student to write it themselves. Okay, right. And then we have homework booster to provide the extra practice. So parents and students should know this. We have homework booster, but that is done out of the class. So you do this at home, and the answers are found online. Okay, in the e-study buddy. Then we have apply right now. This component apply right is different for P3 and P4. Okay, because of the different learning ability. So for P3 students, what we have will be work examples, and the teacher will guide you through these work examples, what are the thought processes, and how to arrive at the answer. For P4, then there will be more hands-on. Other than work example, there will be some minor practice, and eventually the student practice on their own. So all these are scaffoldings, okay, which help to help the students. Okay, so let me show you that. Because all these are important, right? As you go higher up, there will be more and more open-ended questions. So you must know how to, phrase the answers, how to structure the answer, how to analyze the question, and so on. Okay, so let me just show it to you. Now, this is for P3 apply reps components. Okay, so what we have here, okay, the work example, it looks like just a question, okay, but the teacher, okay, all these are done already, so the students don't need to answer the question, okay, but the teacher will go through with them some of these examples and identify what are the hints in the question that help to arrive at the answer, okay, so you can refer to the explanation here. How does it link to the answer that is here, which is 3, all right? For open-ended questions, then we have this box, okay, that help to, this is like a prompt or a tip. You help you arrive at the answer. And teacher in class will go through that with you, identify the common things together in the class. All right. So this is slightly different for P4. So P4 will look like this. More analysis. So P4 apply right. Okay. Now we start off with a word example similar to P3 one, but now with more detailed. Okay. At P4 level, we will teach frameworks because now things get more and more difficult, right? Okay. Then P4 is when we teach this framework, and this can be applied to next time P5 and P6. Right. We teach this triple C. We teach this triple C framework, which is command word. That's what I mentioned, right? Okay. Command word is very important. Concept, identifying what this concept is, okay, and what's the context, okay, what are the connection between the diagram and the question, and what is the context, what is the question talking about, all right? That is a question analysis framework. We look at the command word, explain, then that is one of it. The concept, see digested food, right? So there must be digestion, okay, and context, this whole thing, okay, they link to the large intestine. So what is the question asking for? Okay, so that's the question analysis framework. But we also teach an answering framework, and that is the ARR itself. Okay, split is a different naming. So this is answer, information, reasoning. Okay, so answer, information, reasoning. So it helps you structure your answer for questions that look like this. Okay, for this answering framework, ARR, it doesn't apply to all the different question types, only to certain question types. Okay, whereby you need to give a certain short answer, like you identify which organ, find information in the question that gives that link that help you think that it is A, okay, based on the graph, table, picture, or whichever, and then you connect your answer through the reasoning. Okay, so this is the answering framework. So we will teach two frameworks. One is the triple C, this is the question analysis framework, and we have the answering framework, AIR. Okay, that is the first question. But in this component, we also have other features like misconceptions or misphrased answers. So what is the correct way to write the answer? Okay, or what's the correct concept? All right, so these are all in our apply rec component for P4. Okay, then the second question, or rather you can say this is the first question of the review questions. So this is when it's partially guided. There is still a triple C framework given here. Okay, and it's filling the blanks. So the students and the teachers will do it together. It's partially guided. Okay, and finally, the students will try it on their own. Okay, write a full open questions. Okay, on their own. Okay, so we do in these three phase, right? First is, okay, we do it, we learn it together. Okay, then the second phase is we do it together, but the student have to do a bit of this part here. Okay, and the students are independently doing it in the next question. Okay, so that with time, students are on their own, right, to try some of these open questions. Okay, so this is for applied rights component. Just now I was talking about the answer template, right? So I think I forgot to share this. So the answer template, this is found at the back of every cover page. Okay, so for parents, if you see your child's worksheet, the first page is the cover page telling you the which level is for and which subject, right? Behind the science one, we have this, which shows you the answer template for the aim, how to answer aim questions, how to answer control setup, fair test, relationship, and so on. Again, all this can be applied all the way until PSLE. Okay, so that is for reference. So this is in our weekly worksheet. Every week you will see this. This is repeated. Okay. Hold on, Let me share this. Right. So all those things that you have seen, they are scaffolding. Hold on, I think I forgot one thing to share. Let me bring that up. Hold on, Okay, now I forgot to share the practice paper because why the practice paper that we have also is very helpful in the sense that by we have all this scaffolding. Okay, so not just the apply right component. Okay, we also have split the questions by difficulty levels. Okay, this is for P4. Okay, for P3, we do not have all this in place, but for P4 we have because uh, the concepts are more challenging, right? So we actually split by the topic. So like let's say human body system, then split by difficulty level, basic. Okay, this is the another topic. Okay, basically the same topic but split by the subtopic. Okay, they're all under the same topic, human body system. Okay, then the subtopic is human body system, the different kind of systems like digestion, digestive system, respiratory system, and so on. Okay, and the other subtopic is specifically on digestive system. And then we are separated, we have categorized by basic, intermediate, and challenging. Okay, and for the intermediate questions, we provide the triple C framework as well. Okay, just that, okay, we don't have first C because there's no command word here. Okay, there's no command word here. Okay, so we just talk about the second and third C. What's the concept? What's the context in the question? Okay, so all this is really to help the student. This only applies to the intermediate and challenging questions because basic questions is really for students to make sure that fundamentals are there. That's why we do not provide help for that. So intermediate, maybe the student need a little bit more help, and coming to challenging, there will also be the help. Okay, but this is only for the achiever classes. Okay, so if let's say your child is in higher achiever class, then you assume that the child is independent, is able to try these questions on their own without all these frameworks and hints to help the students. Okay, but of course you can always check with the teacher if you face some difficulties. Right? It's not just MCQ, open-ended as well. So open-ended questions, if it's intermediate, okay, we provide some of these prompts. Okay, some of these prompts to help the student link the data and to the answer. Okay, yeah. Whenever necessary, lah. Okay, if there are questions which one is more straightforward, there's no need for hints. Okay, then no, we don't have that hint. All right. Okay, now final part is to really talk about can you support your child's learning. Now, learning science is really new for the P3 students. For P4 students, you may have learned science for a year, but have you mastered all those topics? Have you paid attention in class and be able to score AL1 at this point of time? Okay, because it is very common that students face difficulty trying to score well for science. And even if your child score well for science at P3 and P4 level, things get more and more difficult. So when you go higher up, okay, there'll be more challenges. Okay, but I'll talk about that next time. So how can you really support your child? Now, remember just now I said a lot of examples. What can you do in your daily life to really raise your child's awareness of science? You really do things that, do things as a family and try to find out how to explain some of these things using science. Of course, in a simplified way, not like very complicated. And nowadays it's very, if let's say even the parents have some trouble trying to understand it, no problem, right? Nowadays there's ChatGPT, there's Google, you can easily just check that online, just search in the search engine. A lot of all this information are easily accessible. Okay? Or you could just ChatGPT and they give you some examples of what you can do. Okay, and they can really help your child. So all these are very useful tools. Okay, and is going to be very helpful for a child, to learn about the things that are happening around them. Okay, like for example, how is a cloud formed? Right, why is there cloud in the sky? So all this can be explained, but you will only be learned at a slightly higher level. Okay, even for P3 and P4 level, you can talk about like P3 level, you can talk about magnets. Okay, and maybe your child most likely have already played with magnets. Then you use science to explain first. Right? They may not have learned magnets in school because yes, P4 students have learned, but P3 have not. Okay, but magnet is very easy to understand. And if you have already exposed your child to all this at home, and then when they learn the topic, the more specific science concept, then all these are easy to understand. Okay, so observe things around them, ask questions. Okay, go to different places like a zoo. Okay, ask question and think about how to explain some of the phenomena that you see. Okay, and I think very importantly is to develop a routine. Okay, now maybe you think that it's at the very start of the year, you just started learning science P3 and P4. Okay, but it is important to plan a routine. Maybe you don't want to start now, no problem. You can choose a time. Maybe like once you reach the mid-year point, okay, about June holiday, then you need to start a routine. What are the things to revise? When to finish your homework? All this must be in place. Okay, because if there's no discipline in the work, okay, then there's not sufficient practice. All right, and there can be a lot of small tests, a lot of small tests. So what I always tell parents is, okay, maybe your child is not that good at science, but no worries. Right? As long as there's some improvement along the way, it's always an achievement. Okay? Must always, uh, because I myself is a parent. My child is not so old yet. Okay, he's still a very young boy. But you see, we must always encourage them, help them grow. And it's not always scolding at all. Okay, there must be a positive mindset lah. That's what I would say. Right? So always cheer them on and support them along the way. So when they feel that there's some support, okay, they will work even harder. Okay? So at this point, parents, are there any questions? Or students, if you have any questions, just feel free to ask here. Thanks very much all for joining me tonight here. All right. Let me know if you have any questions regarding P3, P4, regarding PSLE, anything. Regarding our MyStructure curriculum. Yeah. No? No questions? All right. If there are no questions, then once again, thanks everyone for joining me tonight. Okay. Please have a great evening. And if you have not gotten your dinner, yeah, please go ahead and have your dinner. Right. I wish everyone good night and thanks once again. Thank you.